Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
First question is, do you think that the EU has reached the high watermark of integration? Do you think that it's reining back from that now, and that actually the days of Jacques Delors and the EU being ever closer union is over? Or do you think that the move to integration has got new impetus?
I think that's always a very difficult question to answer. On the one hand, there is now an enormous amount on our plate simply in terms of implementing the various powers and the various pieces of legislation that we have, and to set up whole new areas would probably be a lower priority. On the other hand, events also drive decisions, as Harold Macmillan remarked, and we've seen the implications of the economic crisis and the Eurozone crisis, which has also led to change. Now, whether ultimately that you judge that as being more integration or merely improving and making the current level of integration work better is a matter of opinion. I suspect we'll probably have an answer to your question in about 5 or 10 years' time when we look back today.
In the UK, obviously we have a coalition government now, which is a rather interesting situation for us, although it's very common, of course, across Europe. Now, before the election, one might have predicted that the Conservatives, if it had been a Conservative-only government, would have had quite a negative attitude towards the EU, and that the EU would have had a negative attitude towards them, the Conservatives. And they also pulled out of the European People's Party grouping in the European Parliament. Some commentators thought that meant that they would have less influence in Europe. But what has been the reality of both the Conservative-led coalition, but also the fact that there is a coalition? Do we still have influence in the EU?
Oh, I think yes. London is, after all, still the largest global financial market in the world, and it's an asset for the EU as a whole, not just for the UK. It's very important for the UK, of course. So, yes, the UK still does have influence. And I think we've seen in the coalition government quite a proactive and pragmatic approach within certain limits. Now, it's too early to see whether the limits which have been established by the government will actually have implications for how far the UK can influence developments in some areas. I think certainly in the European Parliament, the change of political grouping has had some implications for the influence of Conservative MEPs. But again, we will see in the longer term how that evolves, because certainly there have been some changes in the parliamentary group which is set up, which is very much dominated by the Conservative Party, and whether that will continue to, as it began after the elections in 2009, is, I think, still quite an open question.
And finally, what advice would you give to companies and trade associations, let's say in the UK, on how they should best engage on EU policy? What are the main elements of what they should do if they need to get engaged on a directive or a regulation or an area of EU policy?
Well, I think the first piece of advice is to be aware of what's going on. Unless you know what's going on at the EU level and understand the rather complicated and lengthy process which leads ultimately to EU legislation, then you have quite a big problem. So, and you have a process which begins long before anything is formally tabled by the Commission. And you have to engage with different actors at different stages in the process, particularly with the Commission, both the civil servants in the Directorates General, but also the commissioners and their cabinets about specific issues in the period which precedes the final drafting of the proposal by the Commission. And there is a pretty open consultation system, so use it. But that also means that you have to follow what's going on and know when legislation is in the pipeline. And then after the Commission has proposed it, you need to engage with the European Parliament and their individual MEPs particular MEPs on a given file have huge influence on the position the Parliament is going to take, and similarly you need to engage with the British government, but sometimes also with other national governments, because they are in the other half of the legislature, which is the Council.
Jonathan Scheele, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.